The Senari descended silently from the vast expanse of space, their ships gleaming like silver phantoms against the backdrop of a dark sky. Their arrival was unlike any other. The people of Earth never saw it coming. They did not crash into cities or destroy landmarks. They simply appeared over the quietest of places in forests and valleys, their technology so advanced that it left no trace of their existence on Earth. Their ships hovered above the ground with a gentle hum, their forms shimmering in the night air. The Senari did not come with weapons or demands. Their mission was peaceful. They came with a message to learn and to observe humanity from a distance. They called themselves the Senari, and their creed was simple: humans were untouchable. They did not interfere in the lives of others. They did not harm the fragile life they found on this planet, for the Senari had lived for millennia, learning from countless worlds, yet never once intervening in the course of another species' history. Arland, the leader of the Senari mission, stood at the edge of the ship looking at Earth below with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. They had heard much about humanity, the contradictions of the species, the beauty of human connection, and the violence that often followed it, the moments of joy, and the overwhelming sadness that seemed to be woven into the fabric of their existence. The Senari had watched them for weeks now from their concealed ships, never making their presence known, only observing from afar. The quiet hum of their ship filled the air as Arland thought of their mission, the reason they had come. They were not here to conquer or to take, but to understand, to watch without interference. It was a delicate balance, for their people had known for generations that their presence in another species' world could change things in ways that could never be undone. They had learned that life could thrive or falter depending on how it was handled, and the Senari were determined to do no harm. But the longer they observed, the more Arland began to question whether their creed would hold as firmly as they had once believed. There were moments of beauty and compassion among humans, but there were also moments of rage and destruction. Arland had watched the violence erupt across the globe as wars raged over land and resources, watched the suffering of millions as cities crumbled under the weight of greed and cruelty. How could they remain detached in the face of such pain? How could they stand by and simply watch, knowing that they had the power to stop it all? The Senari ships stayed hidden in the shadows, always out of reach of human eyes. As they monitored the situation, Arland could see the contrasts clearly: the hopeful faces of children and the weary eyes of those who had seen too much, the kindness between strangers and the hatred that could tear a society apart. And yet their creed remained the same: humans are untouchable. We do not harm them. But as Arland looked down at Earth once more, they couldn't help but wonder if it was enough to simply watch, or if something more was required of them in this fragile and uncertain world. Arland stood hidden beneath the cover of towering trees, their form barely visible, as they watched the human world unfold before them. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the earth. The noise of the city far in the distance was a constant hum that blended into the symphony of nature, a noise that Arland could feel vibrating through the air, and yet it felt so disconnected from the natural world. The hum of human ambition, the pulse of their ever-advancing technology, and the weight of their ceaseless desire for progress. The Senari had observed the city for days. They had seen the endless flow of people going about their daily lives, unaware of the otherworldly presence observing them from the shadows. And while Arland had spent years studying humanity from afar, something stirred in them now, an unfamiliar feeling that perhaps observation was no longer enough. They had witnessed the beauty of human emotion, the strength of their connections to one another, but they had also seen their darker side, the anger that fueled violence, the desperation that led to betrayal. It was these moments that lingered in Arland's mind the most, the moments when humanity seemed so fragile and yet so capable of destruction. As the night grew deeper, Arland ventured closer to the edge of the city, their ship hidden in the dense forest, a few miles away, leaving them to navigate on foot through the urban sprawl. The city lights twinkled in the distance, like 1,000 stars scattered across the ground. Arland's presence remained undetected, their form blending effortlessly into the night air, moving with a fluid grace that made them almost invisible to the human eye. It was then that they noticed her. A young girl walking alone down a narrow alley. She looked no older than 12, her face illuminated by the soft glow of streetlights, her footsteps light and quick, as if she were late for something. but there was something about her that caught Arland's attention, a curiosity that drew them closer. Her eyes reflected a spark of wonder as she gazed up at the stars above. Even amidst the chaos of the city, she seemed out of place, like someone who had slipped through the cracks of a bustling world to find solace in the simplicity of the night. Without thinking, Arland moved closer, following her footsteps from a distance, careful to stay hidden in the shadows. Their heart beat faster. The closer they got to the girl, they had never been this close to a human before. The connection felt undeniable, a sense of wonder mixed with caution as they observed the girl's every movement. She stopped beneath a street lamp and looked up at the sky, her gaze intense, as though she were searching for something just out of reach. In that moment, a breeze stirred the air, and the girl turned suddenly, as if sensing something unseen. She froze for a moment, her eyes searching the darkness, and Arland felt a strange pull to reveal themselves, to step out of the shadows and into her world. But they resisted. Their creed was clear: humans were untouchable, and yet in the stillness of the night, something inside Arland began to question that very rule. Before Arland could decide what to do next, the girl spoke softly, as though to herself. "I know you're there." Her voice barely a whisper, but it carried through the silence of the alley and straight into Arland's heart. Her words were not fearful, but filled with a strange curiosity and understanding, as if she knew more than she should. The tension in the air grew thicker as both stood frozen in the moment. The girl's eyes locked on the space where Arland stood hidden, and for a moment time seemed to stretch infinitely. Arland could no longer stay hidden, and with a soft movement they stepped into the light, their form glowing faintly under the street lamp. The girl's eyes widened, but she did not scream, she did not run. Instead, she simply looked up at Arland with an expression that seemed to ask questions without words. A silent understanding passed between them, two beings from different worlds, connected by a single moment of recognition. The girl did not react with fear, nor did she run. Instead, she stood still, her eyes wide but calm, as if the presence of Arland was something she had been expecting all along. There was a sense of quiet understanding between them, an unspoken connection that neither could explain. Arland's heart pounded in their chest as they observed the girl's unflinching gaze. They had spent countless hours observing humanity, but never had they encountered a human who saw them so clearly, so directly. "Who are you?" the girl asked, her voice steady, but filled with a curiosity that could not be masked. "What are you?" Arland's form shimmered slightly in the dim light as they took a step closer, drawn to the girl by a force they couldn't explain. They had to resist the urge to reach out, to offer some form of comfort or reassurance. Their creed rang in their ears, the very words they had lived by for centuries. Humans are untouchable. We do not harm them. But in this moment, standing in the presence of this child, Arland felt something stir deep within them. "I am not what you might expect," Arland replied, their voice a soft hum, their words flowing in a language that was unfamiliar yet understood by the girl. "I come from the stars, from far beyond your world. I am here to learn." The girl tilted her head, clearly processing what she had just heard. "The stars?" she asked slowly, as if testing the words. "Are you like the others, the ones that come in big ships and take people?" Arland felt a pang of guilt. The Senari had never taken anyone, never sought to harm or control, but the girl had heard the rumors. The fear that spread among humans was rooted in their history of invasion, of unknown forces arriving to claim or destroy. How could they explain the truth? How could they make this child understand that their kind did not come to conquer or possess, but only to observe and learn? "No," Arland answered firmly. "We do not come to take. We do not come to harm. We simply watch." The girl's eyes softened. She stepped closer, her small feet making no sound on the concrete as she crossed the space between them. "I don't think you're here to hurt anyone," she said, as if she had made up her mind about them in that instant. "You don't seem like the others. But why are you hiding?" Arland paused, unsure of how to explain the complexities of their mission, the strict rules that govern their actions. "We do not interfere," Arland said after a long moment. "That is why we stay hidden. We watch, we learn, but we do not influence." The girl nodded thoughtfully, though her brow furrowed in confusion. "But isn't it hard to watch people when they're hurting each other?" she asked, her voice small, almost sad. "Why can't you help?" The question cut deep into Arland's soul, far deeper than they expected. The girl had unknowingly posed the very dilemma that had been plaguing them for days. How could they watch the suffering of humanity, knowing they had the power to stop it? How could they stand by while the world teetered on the edge of destruction? Arland could not answer her directly. Their oath of non-interference was not something that could be broken lightly. The Senari believed that each species must walk its own path, learn from its mistakes, and evolve on its own terms. They had no right to intervene, no matter how much they wished to ease the pain of the world. "You're right," Arland said softly, their voice filled with the weight of their internal struggle. "It is hard, but it is the way things must be. We do not harm. We do not touch." The girl studied them for a long moment, her young face serious, as if weighing the meaning of their words. Finally, she gave a small nod, as if accepting their answer, though Arland could see the question still swirling in her eyes. "I think you can help," she said, her voice growing more confident. "Maybe not in the way you think, but you can help." Arland felt a strange warmth in their chest at the girl's words. It was a fleeting hope, one that filled them with a sense of connection that they had never expected to feel. In that moment, as they looked into the girl's eyes, they realized that the world was not as simple as their creed had once made it seem. Perhaps in the quietest corners of humanity, there was room for something more. The girl smiled at them, a small but genuine smile, before turning and walking away. Arland watched her disappear into the shadows of the alley, their heart heavy with the weight of her words. As they stood there alone, the silence of the city pressing in around them, they couldn't help but wonder if they were already beginning to change, not just the world, but themselves. The encounter with the girl haunted Arland, a strange warmth lingering in their mind long after she had disappeared into the night. The words she had spoken echoed in their thoughts, tugging at the very core of their existence. "Maybe not in the way you think, but you can help." Arland knew that such a thought went against everything they had been taught. They were not to intervene. They were not to touch the world of humans, no matter how desperate the situation might seem. But those words, spoken by a child, unsettled the certainty with which they had once clung to their creed. As days passed, Arland watched the world unravel from their hidden position in the shadows. The initial thrill of first contact had faded, replaced by a growing tension among humanity. Governments, media outlets, and factions across the globe had begun to react to the presence of the Senari, and the reactions were mixed. Some saw the aliens as a sign of divine intervention, a solution to the world's ills, while others viewed them with suspicion and fear. In the United States, President Dempsey, a man known for his ruthlessness and ambition, seized the opportunity to address the world. His speech was broadcast globally, a mix of calculated calm and forceful rhetoric. He spoke of unity, of the hope that the Senari would offer humanity a chance to thrive beyond its own destructive tendencies. The government began to gather scientists, military leaders, and diplomats, all tasked with making contact with the alien race. But there was another side to this global stir. As quickly as Dempsey appeared to rally people behind the idea of peaceful cooperation, conspiracy theorists, extremists, and world leaders with less noble intentions began to question the true motives of the Senari. Fear spread like wildfire. People wondered if these extraterrestrials came to conquer Earth, to enslave or annihilate humanity. Leaders in China, Russia, and parts of Europe mobilized forces to prepare for the worst. The atmosphere was thick with paranoia and distrust. Despite all the fear, the Senari remained silent, their ships still hidden, their presence felt only through the subtle shifts in the atmosphere, the quiet hum of their energy fields. Arland could feel the weight of the conflict brewing around them, the growing human desperation to understand and control what they couldn't comprehend. It was clear that the more the world speculated, the more fragmented humanity became. Arland's heart sank as they observed the chaos unfold. It became evident that the Senari could not remain hidden forever. The pressure from humanity, both to reveal themselves and to intervene, was mounting. Arland's vow of non-interference was tested with every passing day, and they knew that the longer they stayed in the shadows, the more likely they were to be discovered, and perhaps even forced into a position where their presence could no longer be ignored. Meanwhile, in the heart of the political storm, Dr. Evelyn Foster, a scientist known for her work on extraterrestrial phenomena, had begun her own investigation into the Senari. She was an academic, driven by a need to understand the unknown. Her reports, though speculative, were gaining attention. She began to reach out to the governments, offering her expertise, hoping to bridge the gap between humans and the aliens that had made contact. Her fascination with the Senari had only grown stronger since the first signs of their presence had been detected. As the days dragged on, it became increasingly clear that the Senari's secrecy was only fueling the flames of distrust. It was only a matter of time before they would have to decide. Would they continue to watch from the shadows, remaining true to their creed? Or would they step into the light, revealing themselves to the world and risking everything? Arland stood at the precipice of a decision that could change the course of human history, knowing that the fate of both their kind and the humans they had sworn not to harm now rested in their hands. The rising tension was palpable. No longer could they stay hidden. The time for observing had passed. The world had already begun to change, and Arland could feel the weight of that change pressing down upon them. Something had to give. Something had to change. But the question remained, what would that change be? And at what cost? The tension across the globe reached a boiling point. Governments scrambled to act, divided between those who saw the arrival of the Senari as a blessing and those who saw it as a threat. Military forces were on high alert, while scientists and world leaders lobbied for an audience with the aliens, desperate to either negotiate a peaceful coexistence or prepare for an inevitable confrontation. The world was teetering on the edge, caught between hope and fear, the unknown vast and endless, yet increasingly within their grasp. Arland could feel the weight of the moment pressing down upon them. Their decision to remain hidden was no longer sustainable, and they knew that soon they would have to step into the world they had observed for so long. The question was no longer about whether they would reveal themselves, but how they would do so without shattering their creed. They had vowed never to harm, never to interfere, but the time had come when their silence was starting to make the very thing they feared, conflict and distrust, grow stronger. The girl, the one who had seen them, who had understood them, kept returning to Arland's mind. Her words echoed through them, over and over. Maybe not in the way you think, but you can help. What did that mean? Could they really help without breaking their vow? Or had their failure to act already caused irreparable harm? It was on a clear evening, when the stars shone brightly above the silent forests where their ships were hidden, that Arland made their choice. It wasn't a choice between hiding or revealing themselves. It was a choice between remaining passive observers or becoming active participants in the fate of humanity. The Senari had always held to the belief that life must evolve on its own, that interference would only create more harm than good. But Arland's heart ached with the knowledge that the world's path, if left to continue on its current trajectory, would lead to destruction. They had seen it in the hatred, the wars, and the constant struggle for power. Humanity's capacity for both creation and destruction was immense. Arland could no longer stand by as an observer. It was time to reveal themselves. Arland's ship, which had hovered silently for days above the quiet expanse of the forest, shimmered under the stars. With a single thought, they initiated the sequence that would make their presence known. The energy field around the ship dissipated, revealing the vessel in its full glory. A sleek, almost organic-looking craft that pulsed softly with a light of its own. The ship hovered above the forest floor, casting a soft glow that illuminated the trees beneath it. Arland stepped forward, their form now fully visible to the world below. the human world that would no longer remain unaware of their existence. At that moment, a ripple of fear and awe swept across the world. Satellites picked up the sudden energy surge, and within seconds, news outlets began to broadcast images of the Senari ship, captured from cameras all over the globe. Governments scrambled to respond, but the Senari had already made their move. Arland didn't speak to the masses at first. Instead, they reached out to the one person they had not been able to forget, the girl. They had no way of knowing where she was, but they could feel her presence, like a distant echo, guiding them toward the path of revelation. It was as if the girl had unlocked something within Arland, a human connection that transcended their creed. And so, they sent a message, not to the world at large, but to her, directly in the same way they had communicated before, through a thought, a pulse of energy that only she would feel. The message was simple. It is time. Arland didn't know how long it would take for the girl to find them, or even if she would. But in that moment, as they stood before the world, Arland felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. The Senari had come to learn, to watch, and now, they were part of the story, not as distant observers, but as active participants. The world's fate, humanity's fate, was no longer something they could simply watch. They had to help, in the only way they knew how. As the ship's glow became brighter, reflecting off the surrounding trees and the distant sky, Arland took a deep breath, preparing for the conversation that would follow. The choice was made, and now, it was time to face the consequences, whatever they might be. The moment Arland revealed themselves, the world shifted. News agencies scrambled, their broadcasts filled with images of the sleek alien ship hovering above the forests. The government's military units were mobilized, though their movements were slower than their paranoia had hoped. There was a desperate need to control the situation, to claim authority over what was happening. Yet, in the chaos, there was also an undeniable pull toward understanding, a longing to connect with the beings who had watched over them for so long. Arland stood at the edge of the ship, their figure bathed in a soft, ethereal light that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the universe. They were visible to the world now, their presence undeniable. The silence that had surrounded them for so long was now replaced by a cacophony of human voices, questions, fears, and cries of both wonder and dread. But Arland had not revealed themselves to the masses. Their attention was fixed on something far more personal, the girl. She had been the catalyst for this decision, the one who had seen them, who had sensed their presence. She had understood, even before Arland did, that there was more to their mission than simply watching from afar. There was something about her, a depth of perception and a clarity of purpose that had drawn Arland to this moment. She had made them question everything they believed about their creed. And so they reached out to her once more, sending a pulse of energy into the world, one that only she could feel. It was a call, a simple invitation. Come. Minutes passed, then hours, and still there was no sign of the girl. Arland's heart fluttered with uncertainty. Had they made a mistake? Had their choice to break their silence been too hasty, too rash? They had believed that revealing themselves would open the door to understanding, but now, standing in the open, surrounded by the weight of humanity's gaze, Arland wasn't sure. Then, in the quiet of the night, as the first stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Arland sensed her, the faintest ripple of energy, a pulse that vibrated through the very air. The girl was near. From the shadows of the trees, she emerged, her steps light, her face alight with wonder, yet carrying a sense of purpose. She had found them. "I knew you would be here," she said softly, her voice steady, her eyes never leaving Arland's. "I felt you. I knew you were waiting for something." Arland felt the weight of her words, the sense that in some strange way, they were connected, tied together by forces neither of them could fully comprehend. "You were right," Arland replied, their voice resonating with a deep, reverberating hum. "We cannot remain silent anymore." The girl nodded, her gaze searching Arland's glowing form. "I told you," she said, her voice stronger now. "You can help. You can teach us." Arland's pulse quickened. The girl's words, those same words they had heard before, felt like an invitation to something greater. The world was watching, but it was she who had come to them, and in doing so, had unlocked something deep within Arland. Teach us. That was the key. It wasn't about interference. It wasn't about taking over. It was about guiding, about offering something that humanity didn't even know they needed, a new way to understand themselves and their place in the universe. "I cannot solve your problems," Arland said, their voice low but certain. "I cannot erase the pain or the struggles you face. But I can show you a path, one that is not defined by war or greed. I can show you what we have learned from the worlds we have visited, how we have learned to live without destroying." The girl's eyes widened. She stepped closer, as if sensing the magnitude of what Arland was offering. "You mean, we can change?" Arland nodded, a quiet sorrow in their gaze. "Yes, but only if you choose it. Only if you are willing to let go of what has held you back. The power to change is within you, within all of you, but it is not easy. It will take time, and it will require sacrifice." The girl looked up at the sky, as if searching for the answers among the stars. "We're willing to try," she said finally, turning back to face Arland. "We have to." A quiet peace settled over Arland's heart. They had come to observe, to learn, but now they understood. The true purpose of their mission was not simply to watch, but to offer a spark, a possibility. They could show humanity a different path, one of hope and understanding. The world would not change overnight, but this moment, was the beginning of something new. And with that, Arland turned their gaze toward the vast expanse of Earth, feeling the weight of humanity's future in their hands. As Arland and the girl stood together beneath the vast expanse of the stars, the world around them felt different, charged, as if the very atmosphere had shifted. The tension that had gripped the planet for so long was palpable, but now, with the Senari presence revealed, there was something else, a subtle shift in human consciousness. The girl, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and determination, had just been given a vision of something greater. The weight of the decision to act had settled in her heart, and she could feel the stirrings of change in the air. The world was watching, waiting for a sign. What would humanity do with the knowledge that they were no longer alone in the universe? What would they do with the opportunity to reshape their future, guided by beings who had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations? Would they choose fear and suspicion, or would they embrace the possibility of change? Arland knew the answer was not simple. Humanity's history had been marred by violence, greed, and division. To believe that they could simply change in an instant was naive. But there was hope that the presence of the Senari, the revelation of their wisdom, might be the spark humanity needed to ignite a different path. As the girl turned back to Arland, her eyes shining with newfound purpose, the silence that had once seemed oppressive now felt full of possibility. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice steady, filled with the weight of a question that held the future in its hands. Arland looked down at her, feeling a deep sense of responsibility, but also something more, an unexpected connection. The girl was the bridge between their two worlds. She was the first to see beyond the surface, to understand the true purpose of the Senari presence. She would be the one to lead humanity into this new era, even if she didn't yet fully realize it. "We will begin," Arland said simply. "But the change must come from within you, from all of you. We can show you what we have learned, how we have lived in harmony with the cosmos, but the choice to change is yours. We cannot make it for you." The girl nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. She understood now that the path ahead would not be easy. Change never was. But there was a fire within her, something that had been lit when she first saw Arland and realized that she could play a part in something larger than herself. Back in the cities, the world was reacting. News reports flashed across screens, showing images of the Senari ship, the light it emitted, the first visible sign of their arrival. The governments of the world, already in turmoil over how to respond to this revelation, now had to face the inevitable truth. There was no going back. The world could no longer pretend that it had not been seen. The Senari had arrived, and humanity's future was forever changed. In the halls of power, leaders argued, divided between those who wanted to embrace the Senari's guidance and those who feared it. The military, once poised to strike, hesitated, unsure of how to respond to an enemy, or ally, that seemed beyond comprehension. But amid the chaos, there were whispers of something new, a movement toward peace, toward understanding. The girl's words, echoing the message Arland had shared, spread like wildfire across social media and news outlets. We can change. We must change. And though the path ahead was unclear, there was a sense of unity growing among the people. They were no longer content to live in the same cycle of conflict and greed. The Senari had shown them the possibility of a different way, a way that valued connection over division, understanding over fear. Arland could feel the change ripple through the collective energy of humanity. It was subtle at first, like the faintest breeze that stirs the leaves of a tree before a storm. But it was there, undeniable, unyielding. Humanity was awakening, and the first seeds of transformation were being sown. Yet, Arland knew that the journey was just beginning. There would be those who resisted, who clung to the old ways of power and control. The road ahead would not be without struggle, but for the first time in a long time, Arland felt something they had never felt before: hope. The world was shifting, and for the first time, the Senari weren't just silent observers. They were part of the story, and together with humanity, they would shape the future. The girl, her face still glowing with the fire of possibility, looked up at Arland. "We can do this," she said softly, more to herself than to anyone else. But Arland heard it, and in that moment, they believed it too. The world was changing, and it was more evident than ever as days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The initial shock of the Senari's arrival had settled into something else, a quiet but palpable shift in the collective consciousness of humanity. Around the world, whispers of peace, unity, and collaboration were spreading, slowly but steadily gaining momentum. Governments, once entrenched in their fears, began to open diplomatic channels, not just with each other, but with the Senari. For the first time in history, humanity faced an opportunity to rise above its ancient divisions, guided by beings whose wisdom had spanned countless worlds. Arland, standing in the center of this transformation, felt the weight of it all. The moment of revelation, the moment when they stepped out of the shadows, had been only the beginning. Now their task was to help guide humanity through this monumental shift, to provide the insights and understanding needed to help them navigate a future that was, for all intents and purposes, entirely unknown. But with the girl, who had become their closest ally and guide among the humans, by their side, Arland knew that the potential for change was real. In the months following the Senari's revelation, the girl, whose name was Evelyn, had become a symbol of hope. She was no longer just an observer. She was the bridge between two worlds. And as Arland had said, the change had to come from within humanity. Evelyn had taken that to heart, not just in words but in action. She worked tirelessly, traveling across nations, speaking to leaders and civilians alike. She spoke of unity, not as a utopian dream, but as a practical necessity. The Senari had shown them what was possible, but it was up to humanity to choose whether they would embrace it or fall back into old patterns of distrust and division. But even with Evelyn's guidance, there were still those who resisted. Power-hungry leaders, those with vested interests in keeping the old systems intact, sought to discredit the Senari, to push the message of unity aside. They stoked fear, telling their people that the Senari's presence was a threat, a way for the aliens to manipulate humanity for their own gain. For every movement toward peace, there were forces pulling back toward the status quo, toward the familiar cycle of greed and conflict. Yet, the resistance began to wane. Arland, from their ship hidden deep within the forests, could see the quiet transformation taking root in the hearts of everyday people. In the cities, in the towns, in the quiet rural villages, there was a growing recognition that something had to give. The resources of the planet were dwindling, the environment was suffering, and the world's history of violence and division had led to a breaking point. People were tired of war. They were tired of greed. They were ready for something different. And so, the first steps toward true unity began. Evelyn, working with leaders, scholars, and even activists, helped establish a global coalition, one that was not built on the foundations of power and control, but on collaboration and shared responsibility. The Senari, their knowledge of the cosmos and the delicate balance of life, became invaluable guides. They didn't offer all the answers, but they gave humanity the tools to find them. They showed humans how to listen to the earth, how to heal what had been damaged, how to move forward with care and compassion. As the global coalition took shape, Arland felt a deep sense of fulfillment, though they knew their work was far from over. Humanity was beginning to recognize its own potential, its own ability to change. But it would take time. The old structures of power didn't disappear overnight. There were still battles to be fought, ideologies to overcome, and systems of oppression to dismantle. But the seed had been planted. One evening, as Arland and Evelyn stood together beneath the stars, looking up at the same sky that had once seemed so distant, Evelyn spoke softly. "We've done it, haven't we?" she asked, her voice filled with quiet awe. Arland turned to her, their form glowing softly in the dim light. "No," they said, their voice filled with both certainty and humility. "You've done it. You led them to this moment. We've only helped show the way." Evelyn smiled, a soft, knowing smile. "We did it together." And in that moment, Arland knew it was true. They had done it together. The Senari had come not to rule or to take over, but to guide, offering wisdom to a world in desperate need of it. And humanity, for the first time in its long history, had reached out and embraced it. The future was uncertain, as all futures are, but the path forward, though difficult and fraught with challenges, was one of hope. Arland had come to observe, but now they had become part of the story, woven into the very fabric of humanity's awakening. Together, they had begun the work of healing, not just the earth, but the very soul of humankind. And as they looked to the stars, Arland knew that this was only the beginning.